Hi, I'm Professor Josh Gutoff here at Gratz College, and as it's getting close to Passover, I want to take the chance to talk to you about Hametz, and I also want to take the chance to have some of these really tasty but really bad for me peanut butter crackers, because in a couple of days I'm not going to be able to have this because it's Hametz. Now you might wonder, why is it Hametz? Think of leavened bread or risen bread. This doesn't look like it's risen much. It's two very skinny crackers. Doesn't look like there's any rising at all. Well, if you want to understand Hametz, you've got to forget the word risen. You've got to forget the word leavening and think of the word fermentation, because that's what it means in the Hebrew Bible. What's forbidden on Passover is fermented bread. Now, we don't often think of bread as fermented, but in fact, that's what's going on when you make bread. What's fermentation, after all? It's when yeast or other microscopic critters eat sugars that's in the grain, or in whatever, it eats the sugars, and it produces, as a result, alcohol and carbon dioxide. And if you've ever made bread, and you know that really good smell when bread's rising, that's the smell of alcohol from the fermentation. And the gas that makes it rise, that's the carbon dioxide. And that's what's forbidden on Passover. Now, of course, there are some things that ferment that are okay on Passover, like wine. You need to have wine on Passover, and that's the fermented product of grape juice, right? The yeast gets in, eats the sugar that's in the grape juice, and it produces the alcohol that makes wine alcoholic, and it produces carbon dioxide, most of which goes away in the winemaking process, unless you're drinking champagne, and then you get some of that carbon dioxide making the bubbles. But that's okay. Why? Because what's forbidden on Passover is fermentation when it happens to product of one of 5 kinds of grain: oats, wheat, rye, barley, and spelt. So the fermented product of one of those 5 kinds of grain, that's the Hametz, and it's entirely forbidden on Passover. Well, what if you don't actually add yeast to it? What's the problem then? Right? I don't know if they added any yeast to this. If I make pasta, I'm not adding any yeast to that. Why should that be a problem? Well, part of our problem in thinking about it is this whole idea of adding yeast. Because if I want to bake bread, or if I want to brew beer, I'm going to go to the store, I'm going to buy a package of yeast, and then I'll add it in. But I don't really have to, because the air is swarming with yeast and other critters. That's how come you can make sourdough bread, right? You leave out the mixture of flour and water, and the yeast from the air comes in and starts the process going. That's also why if you take fresh squoze and orange juice and leave it on the counter, it'll go bad. It'll start to get fizzy, because the yeast that's in the air will get in and start to ferment it. So anytime you've got some kind of glop that's got some sugar or starch and water, it's exposed to the air, there's a good chance that it'll start to ferment. And that's why on Passover, any product that's made of one of those 5 kinds of grains, wheat, rye, oats, barley, spelt, is forbidden, because there's a chance it'll get wet, and over time, if it's exposed to the air, it too will start to ferment. Now, there are a whole lot of other rules on Passover about what you can eat, what you can't eat, how you got to prepare it, all that stuff. We're not going to talk about it right now. But suffice that if you've been trying to figure out why it is that you can have wine and you can have products that have risen because they've had baking soda or whipped egg whites, and you can't have really flat crackers, now you know. Because what's Hametz? It's the fermented product of oats, wheat, rye, barley, or spelt. Have a good Passover, and in the meantime, enjoy your crackers.